All right. I'm going to get things somewhat organized here real quick. This is something I wanted to show you. I was just talking about this last video. Before this one, I had information that I had told you about, and I figured, hey, I might as well show you what I'm talking about. So this is what I meant as far as People Nation. The two, three most prominent groups that come out of People Nation, you'd be aware of: Bloods, um, Vice Lords, and Latin Kings, depending on what part of the country you're working in, and what communities you're working in. These ones you'll see are some affiliation with them. You guys can see that. I'm not gonna, read it to you. I already talked about the same 5-point stars, cross, pyramid. Um, Also, you'll see some pictures of here. So some Vice Lords, as the ones I mentioned, and you tend to see a little bit more of that in the Midwest and some cities. Like Indy has some Vice Lords. I know Chicago does. But these are some symbols that you will have, and colors. Okay, so remember the colors we talked about. Oops, sorry about that. Look at this. Like, for example, this is what you're seeing anymore. For a while they got away from colors, but what they're really doing now is, I'm not saying these schools or or teams are affiliated with it, but what I'm saying is when they go by certain items, it can have, symbolism in it, or at least they use those items as symbols. So obviously colors of black and gold here. Same here with red. You guys can see that. UNLV, some people, you'll see some occasionally, Vice Lords wear something along those lines. Same thing, and I'll explain why here, because if you turn around, um, it's basically in reverse. It's Vice Lords Nation United. Um, and then you have the knockoff Louis Vuitton, which still has the VL in there, so Vice Lord. So just stuff like that. You'll see little symbolism here. All these things are examples of different symbols that you would see. It's pretty self-explanatory, I think, if you look at it. And then same thing goes here with 5-point stars, all these different things. This was a blood, simply because you see the blood written in it. And it's also People Nation, BLOOD. Yeah, so I don't think I really need to explain the rest of it right now. So there's that. Let's see what else we've got. The other one, Latin Kings. We have, whoops. Okay, this is the one I was telling you about earlier. So this was the original. What they're basically saying is down, they're representing Latin Kings, who they belong to, and then they are disrespecting anybody that would be in Folk Nation by having this downward pitchfork. Okay, and you guys can read that. And yes, that is for MS-13, because MS-13 is affiliated with Folk Nation. Okay, you guys, let's see. And then, so Folk Nation, black and blue, like Crips, Gangster Disciples, and I mentioned MS-13 also, but this is what you would see here. Notice, yes, there's a crown here, but you have to look at how many points it has. That's another important thing to point out. When you see crowns, it doesn't mean one or the other. You have to look at the number of points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And yeah, it's pretty simple, self-explanatory. Downward 5, disrespecting People Nation. And you guys, if it would go back here, my computer's being a pain in the butt. But while we're here on this page, you can see another one that also counts as People Nations, Black Bee Stones. So just thought I'd point some of those things out. And I'm having trouble with, there we go, keeping that one. And yes, you'll see this sometimes, especially tattoos, more so than anything. The heart with wings. But then your affiliation of, once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points on the crown. So therefore, once again, Gangster Disciples, the 7-4 that I mentioned earlier, or for GDs. Okay. All right, I did. I'll talk a little bit about the motorcycle gangs while I'm on this. So we have, let's see, I'm fixing something here. So I want to focus on the Mongols and the Hells Angels. Okay, so basically, Hells Angels is by far the largest motorcycle club gang in the world. They have people on or chapters on, I believe it's 6 different continents. Whereas the Mongols, they I say only they have it on, I think, 4 different continents. So you guys can see their chapters as far as what countries where they're at. So let's go continue on the Mongols. That's their that's an example of their patch, or on the vest, the back of it. They consider themselves the 1%ers. So basically, they're saying they are a small gang, just like the Mongols or Mongolians. If you go back in history, I'll let you guys read some of that or look into it. That's where they get their name from. And it's also why you see this little guy here. He looks like Genghis Khan, or the way the Mongols used to appear, essentially. So they, like I said, the 1% for them was, oh, well, we're a small group. We are 1%, but we are the top 1%. We're the biggest, baddest, whatever. That's essentially what they were trying to say with the 1% thing. Hell's Angels. This is what you'll see with symbolism there. This actually has a unique addition to it. So back when the Hell's Angels first started, it supposedly went back to bombing planes back in World War II. They can't necessarily verify that for sure, but that's kind of where they believe it went back to, or at least affiliated with. So needless to say, you had the original symbol, like this one, had the mouth and the jaw more open. But then in the 1990s, the FBI actually got an agent into the Hells Angels, and he actually got to where he's fairly high up. But either way, and then what happened was some of the Hells Angels members, when they got arrested and got in trouble, they were essentially accused of ratting other people out and getting people arrested. So from that point on, the symbol changed to a mouth that was sewed shut. So just thought I'd point that out to you. Let's see. They still deal with the same issues, or not issues, but same things, same crimes that some of your street gangs will. Difference being, obviously, they pride themselves on more of being a motorcycle club, even though they even though they sell drugs and do drugs, even though they deal in arms. Sometimes they run drugs and guns throughout the country. They do other criminal activities. You name it. Essentially the same type of stuff that street gangs would do, the motorcycle gangs do, but it's a little bit different. They also tend to be there are fewer blacks in motorcycle gangs, and there are more, say, whites and Hispanics, but especially whites, though, that are in motorcycle clubs, motorcycle gangs. These two, the reason I picked the Mongols and Hells Angels is, for one, they're probably the 2 biggest ones, and also they happen to be rivals. So even though Hells Angels says basically it's not a rivalry, since we keep kicking their butts all the time and have far more people. But the one thing I did want to point out, that it was brought up in one of the, I think it was Reese that brought it up, and I saw some other people that had mentioned something about hybrid gangs. There aren't really any hybrid gangs. Whether the book says that or not, it's not. They aren't truly hybrid gangs. They are the affiliations, like I mentioned earlier, with Folk Nation and People Nation. That's not a hybrid gang. That's simply basically alliances. Okay. And then you have Mongols. And an example of what I'm going to explain here is a quote hybrid between motorcycle gangs and street gangs. All it really was an agreement, which actually led to a big rift in the Mongols, because essentially there became a point where the Mongols, some of the leadership in Mongols disagreed, and they said, like, oh, well, we're too small to compete with Hell's Angels. We need more members to get more influence, to get more, basically make more money on the streets, etc. So their solution, or at least most of their members or leaders at the time, said, well, why don't we bring in Sureños? So Sureños was a street gang, and a lot of the Mongols, some of the higher ups that really believed in that 1% thing, are like, why are we bringing in this, what they believe to be a lower, lesser quality gang or, affiliation? Why would we bring them in with us? And so that caused a big problem. So anymore, that's about as close as you get to hybrids. It's really not a hybrid. It's an agreement to do business together. It's a business transaction. So, all right, let's see. One other thing I want to cover before I actually get into history of gangs, even though that kind of covered some of the history of motorcycle gangs, was getting information in and out of prisons, things like that. So yes, you have corrupt corrections employees. That's one way they get it in and out, information and supplies. When people visit, same thing. They know how to speak, and they know, if you want to call it code or whatever you would like to call it. They can do it, speaking in person, or they can send out letters. And if the person on the other side knows how to read it, it's essentially getting the same information in and out. It's not like it's overly complicated or crazy. It's that, and either agreement because of money that the say corrections officer may get, or because the person on the inside threatens the safety of that person's family, etc. Those are ways it gets in and out information, and other things happen. So it's not all that uncommon, unfortunately. So, all right. But as far as that is concerned, that is all I have for you right there. And then I may have a history type of lesson. I'll put that up also and let you guys know. Otherwise, hopefully this has been helpful.